When I was growing up, radio was my solace. I loved it so much that later I chose it for my career. I can remember being 10 years old with my transistor radio, listening in Southern California, listening in Los Angeles to 10Q and KHJ. Later, it was as a teenager when the FM dial caught me, it was KLOS, KMET, KNAC for some a little harder, and KROQ was the rock of the 80s and the complete alternative that changed my life. The call letters were cool. The music and bands remain bookmarks in my life. I can pretty much tell you how old I was, where I was, and what was going on by a song. But my friends were the DJs. Jeff Gonzer, Steve Downs, Bob Coburn, Rita Wilde, Dangerous Darren, Richard Blade, Rodney on the Rock. It was the people who told the stories about music that I loved so much, the bands and what was happening behind the scenes that I loved so much. Many of us love design and architecture in the exact same way. On that rare occasion, when there's this combination of the two, well, that's special. This idea, this connectivity between the stories, the storytelling, and the work, that's where things get really, really interesting. And that's why this month's inductee into the Convo by Design Icon Registry is one such individual, an absolute rarity. This person is truly special, and I have had the good fortune to work with her on a number of occasions. Frances Anderton describes herself, quote, "I tell stories and distill ideas about design, architecture, and the cityscape of Los Angeles through print, broadcast media, exhibitions, and public events," close quotes. All true. And she has the same street cred to back that up. What Frances didn't mention in that elevator pitch is that she herself is part of the zeitgeist of Los Angeles. Nor would she, right? Who would say that? It would be weird. But one of the most wonderful things about Frances is her willingness to get into a topic, chop it up, refine it, reorganize it, and play with it until she has worked it out, boiled it to its very essence into something consumable by anyone who has even a modicum of interest. That's special. To celebrate Frances and her induction into the Convo by Design Icon Registry, I want to reshare her moderating a panel conversation that aired on Convo by Design in 2015. Frances was a fixture for the 2 years that the West Hollywood Design District produced a wonderful event called DIEM, which stands for Design Intersects Everything Made. The programs were curated by Mallory Roberts Morgan and another, who by the way is another remarkable LA gem of an individual. And you don't know this, but you will in a minute. Mallory and Frances were huge influences of mine as I launched this show in 2013 and grew it over the first few years. Quite simply, I wanted to make people think and question the way they did it, to tap into curiosity the way they did, to come up with, and they being Mallory and Frances, to come up with really interesting angles, like Mallory, and rip the niceties away so she could really chop it up the way Frances did and does. This panel from 2015 featured Stefan Simkowitz, Carolina Miranda, and Stephen Goldberg. As you listen to this conversation, notice a few things. First, the topic they were discussing a decade ago has since fully matured and blossomed as LA has become a a global art destination. The kind of destination that it always wanted to be. Notice, too, how Frances leverages the talents and skills of her guests in such an effortless way, quite simply. Due to the very nature of this topic, it could have gone in a very different direction. This conversation is as relevant today as it was then. And at the time of its recording, LA wasn't the art destination that it is today. It wasn't taken as seriously as it is today. And I think what changed, in large part, were conversations like these. And it took someone like Frances to lead the charge. Frances is a treasure. And I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I do hearing it again, as much as I did hearing it the first time. The Convo by Design Icon Registry is presented by Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company and best friend to designers and architects everywhere. The business has become more complicated, and Pacific Sales reverses that in many, many ways. Find out how by checking the links in the show notes. Enjoy this conversation from Diem in the West Hollywood Design District from 2015, featuring the Convo by Design Icon Registry inductee for August, Frances Anderton. And you're going to hear about that right after this. The most important word in the design industry today is service. Product, incredibly important. Price, important. Selection, incredibly important. But stellar service is the premier idea that can make all the difference in the success of any project. This is how design professionals like you demand great service for your projects. And you get your favorite brands in one place with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commissioned professionals to help you specify the right product for each of your projects and get the best price. Non-commissioned, that is incredibly important. And at Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, that means their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that with over 60 years of service in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, inspiration, all the best brands, great prices, the best in the industry when it comes to service, and you know it's reliable. You know that you are going to get predictable results, reliable results every time. And now you have the Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team to help you with their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you've ever experienced before. Earn 3% in Best Buy e-gift cards or 2.5% in a reward check for every qualified and delivered sale, in addition to special trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, and so much more that I can't even begin to try and list it all here. And here's the cherry on top. Access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands and the stellar service you deserve from a company that has been serving the industry for over 60 years. Now, terms and conditions apply to the Pro Rewards program and builder trade incentives. So visit a Pacific Sales expert at a showroom today for full details and learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights.
Standing send-off. So here we go. Here's Frances. Thank you, Mallory. Great to see you all here. This we hope will be the firecracker of a panel to go out on. Really thrilled to have three very interesting people on the panel. Our topic is simple. Stefan will tell me it's stupid, that the question is stupid, but the question the question is, why art? Or rather, why is art so dominant now? When the Broad opened, I heard from a museumologist, there's a discipline called museumology, that in the last 15 years, we'd seen more museums opened than in the last 150 years. Why have we seen so many museums open? We all know there's a just explosion of art fairs. There's a art market that's just going out of control. And yet, sort of, is all this art, and what does it mean, and what relevance does it have? I've just been finding myself just sort of curious about it, and one goes to global capitals, and where cities used to have all sorts of bases for existing. In LA, it used to be aerospace, you know. It now seems to be art. LA, it's art. Berlin, it's art. London, it's art. New York, it's art. So what is all this art about? That is our question. That's what we're going to ask. I'm thrilled to be joined by Carolina Miranda, a good friend. She's a fantastic writer. Sharp as a tack. Don't cross Carolina. Los Angeles Times staff writer, editor of the Culture High and Low blog. At the end, Stefan Simkowitz. He's quite a well-known name, who definitely enjoys playing with what it is to be engaged with art. He's CEO at Simcor, art collector, curator, advisor. He's obviously had a whole career in movies as well. To my immediate left, Stephen Goldberg, a cog in the machinery of the art industry. He's an art attorney. He specializes in art law, and he also writes a regular column for Artillery magazine. Stephen and I got to know each other when we met at the New Objectivity opening at LACMA, a show that I found to be incredibly powerful. Stephen did too. And it was such a sort of emotionally powerful show, and it got me thinking about sort of what's the point of painting. And I actually talked to Michael Govan about it, and I said, where are the painters today who are doing what this school of painters were doing? And he said, painting is dead. So anyway, there was just another thing that played in my mind, sort of I'm trying to just get my head around it. I feel as if there's other people who are also sort of perplexed by what's going on. I am going to say that when I spoke with Stefan yesterday, first of all, he told me why art was a stupid question. And he said, you need to rename the panel the bonsai tree. And then he said, bring a bonsai tree. There was no time to get a bonsai tree between yesterday's phone call and today's panel. So I'm just going to tell him that in this painting behind him, I think this is a bonsai tree. But Stefan, if you could just kick off by telling us why this should not have been called Y Art and it should have been called the bonsai tree, and we'll go from there.
So basically,
there's a microphone.
So basically, I like using the analogy of a tree, a bonsai tree, an oak tree. I mean, she was like, why not an oak tree? I'm like, because it won't fit in the room. But a tree has a trunk, and then it has a limb and another limb and another limb, and then the limbs have limbs, and then they have leaves, etc. And the institutional expansion, the square footage expansion that's happened all over the world institutionally, is really a function of essentially the tree branching out and filling out in sort of the post-war period, fueled by capital, fueled by globalization, fueled by the distribution of images that is sped along through social media, the internet, by the ability for networks to handle large amounts of data, image data. And this has essentially created a construct where we can see the expansion of cultural distribution and cultural production through the global environment, encourage essentially the physical expansion of just retail exhibition space, not just institutionally, but also in the gallery and retail system. And I think the bonsai tree is a really elegant and simplistic way of thinking about what's happening without getting too critical in the sense that painting is dead or it's alive. We are in a system where there is no singular system in charge, where you can think of it in terms of neoclassical economics, where a single person is in charge, something moves out of equilibrium, it can be fixed. We're in an evolutionary adaptive system where the hierarchies have been dismantled. There are many people in charge for short periods of time, but they're connected in this network that sort of can communicate to each other and respond to situations. And accepting that as a new ecology for an environment in which we live is very difficult for us to wrap around, because we want to accept that someone's in charge, that there is order. There isn't. There's chaos, and in that chaos, each and every one of us has a little bit more power if we network together and communicate to essentially establish order. So we're all essentially become responsible for the world, the environment, as well as for the distribution of cultural production that is no longer hegemonically controlled institutionally, academically, or in the retail space by singular powerful gallery systems.
Carolina, you critique art. How does everything you just heard relate to your job as a critic of art?
I mean,
I'm
going to halfway address that, but I also want to address your question about why art and why this moment in Los Angeles. And the first thing is I think we have to be careful not to drink our own Kool-Aid. I mean, the biggest economic sector in Los Angeles is manufacturing. Art is nowhere even close to that in terms of providing jobs. It's a few 100,000 jobs in Los Angeles if you look at the Otis report versus the sort of vast millions that live here. So I think, you know, barring those New York Times style stories aside, it's not as big as we think it is. It just gets a lot of press. The other thing is, yes, the ecology has changed. I think there is there's less of certain institutional types of control, but I think that the expansions that we're seeing in terms of some of the spaces, you know, it's all still pretty 1%. Like, yeah, okay, all these museums are opening everywhere. Like Eli Broad has a museum, and Peter Brandt has a museum, and Jacques Estuano has a museum, but they all represent a pretty elite, sort of highfalutin segment of our...
Cesar Garcia has a museum.
I think of that more of as a Kunsthal, but
okay. But he's a guy who comes from nothing who's established a great system.
Agreed. But I also think that we just need to think carefully about, like, when we bandy all of these names of all of these new museums out there.
They're private museums,
that
generally.
A lot of them are private museums, you know, that benefit private collectors who then don't pay taxes on those purchases. You know, like, there's all of this stuff that goes into that in terms of, like, reputation burnishing that, yeah, it's culture, it adds to the scene, but that it's all coming from sort of like this market-driven segment of society that isn't that surprising.
We have the typical 1% argument here. So we have the typical 1% argument, oppositional, rich versus poor, alienation. It's not as good as it sounds. Very dangerous conversation.
Well, I don't think I said that at all. I think that a big part of the private museum growth can be accounted to that. Are there all kinds of other spaces that have come up during this time? Absolutely. Are there alternative art spaces? Are there Kunsthals like Caesar's? I in no way said that this was the only sector of growth. So that must be something that perhaps you're sensitive to.
I'm very sensitive.
Let's get Stephen.
I accept fundamentally that art is part of the 1%, and that this is a conversation. We all sitting in this audience are part of the 1%. You know?
Well, I think that's wishful thinking in my case, but in any event, the 1%, it's the 1,000% that's driving it, and it's worldwide. It's astonishing, and it's driven up the prices to. I mean, Modigliani sold the other day for $170 million. So it's an asset class. It's not as transparent as money, and so these the 1,000th percentile. They're trading in the art. They're building their own museums, and then they're displaying it. It's a sport for the common people to come and see. You know, when I went to New York for the opening of the Whitney, the next day, the new Whitney. The next day, the line was a half mile around the block in Lower Manhattan. The Broad, I understand. I mean, I went to to one of the openings. But the Broad also had a mass crowd. So, you know, in a way, they're showing off as if it were a racetrack or something like that, and they own the horses.
Carolina? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that is fair. It's like, who's got more coons? You know, there is a lot of that.
This is such a boring conversation.
But I mean, going back to addressing your thing about the bonsai, I don't think art is exclusively a 1% thing. I mean, you said that just by us being here, we are that. I think art addresses much bigger things. It includes a much bigger cohort of the population. It doesn't just include stuff that sells in galleries. I think it's worth remembering that. I mean, I just spent a week in Tijuana, like, talking to artists and architects who are really thinking about the way art and design and all of these things can help rebuild their city in the wave of appalling narco-violence in 2008 to 2010. So is it just a pretty picture that hangs on a wall and sells for $170 million? Like, I don't buy that, and I feel like that's something that I try to reflect in my coverage.
I just have to define this 1% thing. How many of you in the room have a cell phone with a camera on it? Lift up your hands. Okay. You're part of the 1%.
But actually, the other thing that I'm interested in is
globally speaking.
However, within this room, there'll be those that buy art and those that go and observe it and enjoy it in museums. And I guess one of the other things I'm interested in, Carolina, you must be constantly looking for this, is sort of what, in fact, Stefan and Carolina and Stephen, all in your different ways, you were engaged with trying to identify what is the art that somehow reflects our generation. What's the good art? This art is sort of bandied around. It's partly an asset. And yet, there's is there a glut? I should ask: is there a glut in this asset? And
well, is there a glut? The problem is there's actually a shortage. The Modigliani, there are very few of those in private hands, and the one that sold was superb. It was a new.
It wasn't superb. It was painted over. It was a shitty second-rate painting. The guy paid
totally
$170 million.
I totally disagree.
I had lunch with Irving Blum and a couple of professional dealers today. It was a second-rate painting, but you're a professional, so it was a masterpiece because the guy paid $170 million for it.
But Stefan, if indeed it is second-rate, then why did it sell for so much?
This is the kind of conversation that's a complete waste of time. We're talking about some Chinese taxi driver who speculated in the stock market for a decade and spends $170 million on a Modigliani because he wants to be a big shot. It's irrelevant. It's a random event. It's a black swan event. It's like being struck by lightning when walking the cat. It's bullshit. And then this is the central conversation. A Modigliani sold for $170 million. Wow. Let's discuss art. Let's discuss Cesar Garcia. Let's discuss what's actually happening. The Modigliani's a rich guy went shopping. Happens in Paris today, probably. A guy bought his wife a rock for $12 million. It happens everywhere.
Well, except it's cyclical.
It's not cyclical. Throughout history, crazy rich have made a lot of money and have gone and spent more than they should have on things. Happened with the Japanese.
Are those people your buyers?
I hope so. I try to recruit them. I'm in the business to make money and support emerging contemporary art, which I do. The more money I make, the more art I can support. You know, I'm in business.
I mean, it's a massive business at this point, and it's affecting everybody. Like I said, look at the crowds. But we're seeing. You got to look at what's coming out. All the art schools, all the people who are struggling. There's got to be.
We're seeing the biggest expansion in post-war art production in history. We're seeing more art schools, more artists making a living making art than ever before in history. Right. We're seeing more money flowing to young artists, mid-career artists than ever before. We're not seeing some kind of conspiracy of everyone's just buying $170 million. There's the reason why art degrees have proliferated, curatorial studies degrees have proliferated, is because there's more money in art flowing across the entire food chain than ever before.
Okay, that's really interesting because Carolina.
But I think that money in the food chain benefits the artists at the top of the chain, the Jeff Koonses et al., more than it benefits everybody. I mean, the vast majority of artists,
it benefits the Ronnie Horns and the Oscar Murillos.
My point is that the vast majority of artists do not make a living at artists once they graduate from
because they're
school.
Useless.
This is the man who loves art.
I love art. It doesn't mean I like good art, not bad art. Why should the guy make shitty art make money? It's like it's a conspiracy. You're held back. You make bad art. There are a lot of guys who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars making art. David Cordy, hundreds of guys making livings well beyond regular livings today, more than ever before in history. And yeah, there's this like conspiracy that I didn't make a living in art, or writers or critics because they're friends with artists and they feel they've been alienated.
They've always said that.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad art out there.
Forever.
But
I see a lot of shitty art, unfortunately.
But Stefan, also you do.
It's so subjective that I don't think we can really say that.
It's not a subject.
I know a lot of people that would say that Modigliani is a second-rate artist, but everyone's entitled.
I didn't say it's a second-rate artist. I said the piece was painted over and probably not worth $170 million.
It's so subjective that I think it's hard to say that this is a bad piece of art or this is.
It's not subjective. It's not subjective. I tell you something. I do yoga. I can't touch my toes. Last year, my resolution was to try and touch my toes. I still can't do it. You know what? aesthetics is a practice. The more you see, the better you see. And the subjectivity of art means I was born trading aluminum in Russia and made a couple of $1 billion, and I'm 50 now, I'm bored, I'm going through my third marriage, I want to be an art collector, but I've got great taste. I bought it, I paid $150 million for it, therefore it's good. No, you got bad taste. It is a muscle. Yeah, he likes it. Some people like doing drugs and eating chocolate cake. I mean, but because you like it, it doesn't mean it's good. It just means you like it.
But it's good to you.
It's irrelevant. That's the subjective morality of if you like it, it's good.
But actually, I think, okay.
Consensus is built by professionals who look at art all day long, write about art and look at
I
art.
want to ask Carolina, because Carolina does look at art.
I see a lot of crappy art, and I see a lot of crappy art in some good museums and good galleries. I think about it less as liking art than in thinking about longevity. That when you think about the works of art that have power, that continue to have power hundreds of years after they were made, it's not necessarily the stuff that was hot at the moment. I mean, I think, there's a great book by Ross Kingdom called The Judgment of Paris, which talks about the rise of the Impressionists and how basically nobody would take them seriously when they first came out. And in the meantime, there was this great French painter, Meissonier, who was like sort of the Jeff Koons of his era. Nobody remembers him now. He was the hot guy getting the big commissions, selling the paintings for a lot of money for amounts that nobody remembers today. But the work made by these guys who questioned what painting was is what lasted. So I guess when I try to, it's always hard to say definitively, is this going to be a work with lasting resonance? I don't know. I'm not going to be here in 100 years. I hope I have a good enough eye to be able to pick some of that out. But I think that's what we need to be thinking about, not like how much does it cost? Is it good? Is it not? Did so-and-so collect it?
Mention 5 paintings over the last 50 years that you think may have a long span.
What, you want a BuzzFeed list? Is that?
I know. I actually wonder if you two...
I can do that easily.
Okay, who?
Cory Archangel Gradient. Okay, Gradient by Cory Archangel. Any of you know him? He's good. Okay, Sterling Ruby spray painting, Joe Bradley abstract, Josh Smith signature painting, and one other. Let me think. And I'll throw in Oscar Murillo.
But Stefan, define why those rise to the top.
Cory Archangel basically goes to the pinwheel of Photoshop, and he takes the coordinates of a gradient and he prints it big, 72, prints them in different sizes. It's the end of photography and ushers in sort of the age of what I believe is digital painting. It sort of ends the image and it begins it in its digital environment. It opens up essentially an entire platform. Josh Smith dealing with abstract expressionism and the monolithic structures of post-war art. How do you deal with being a painter in the legacy of Jackson Pollock where painting is dead? You just take your signature and you sign on the painting, and you make hundreds of them, and you're kind of like working out how do I be a painter in the legacy of these giants. Joe Bradley, the same thing, dealing with minimalism and pop. Oscar Murillo, I think, Sterling Ruby, very similar, dealing with the legacy of Donald Judd and minimalism and how to destroy minimalism. And then Oscar Murillo, in a strange way, Joe Bradley, Sterling Ruby, Josh Smith are kind of axes that fell the tree of the post-war monolithic movements. Cory Archangel and Oscar Murillo are two artists who usher in essentially a new age. Cory Archangel, along with Seth Price, the sort of post-internet digital painting that essentially is dislocated from the strong narratives of post-war art and much more open. And Oscar Murillo ushers in what I believe is the era of the aesthetics of labor exchange. Community, essentially an inversion of the Warholian aesthetic, which is about commodity fetishization. And I think these 5 artists, essentially, 3 of them fell the tree that lies in the past, and 2 of them essentially grow a new tree. 5 great artists to own.
Not the bonsai tree.
The bonsai tree basically, those are like limbs. Those are like giant limbs that spread from the foundation, and then thousands of things are sprouting from that tree. And if we can have the conversation about those micro conversations that bind those things together, we have a giant art market. We have a hugely prolific, prodigious, and expansive market on our hands.
I love your analysis of those paintings. What did you think, Carolina?
I'd say the end of photography came more with Richard Prince rather than Cory Archangel, but I feel like this
Katie Nolan predates Richard Prince. That's about appropriation. It's not the end of photography, but whatever. of them.
But actually, I find it very interesting in as much as I do feel as if actually the market piece has been rather overwhelming. So actually, to hear you break it down with such passion is very exciting to me, frankly, because I do feel as if, yes, the hordes are lining up for every new art institution that opens. But is there a sort of herd mentality that's being drawn to these museums? To what extent are we understanding our own time as expressed in art?
Well, I think Stefan had a point about these new artists that are exciting. But if you go to the Broad, then you'll see the major artists. It's like they dot all the I's and cross
some of the
all
major
the T's.
artists, there's no arte pauvre whatsoever
so
at the
point
Broad. It's got giant holes.
For those of us, in the art world who see all this stuff all the time, it's kind of boring. But it serves a purpose for people who haven't seen this stuff, and they need to see this stuff. But what he's talking about is a bunch of what are known as early blue chip artists. Okay, there's probably about 100 of them. In May, they were all put up by the New York houses, and they sold okay. This time, they shied away from them, because what they're afraid of is if the market peaks, it's like, last to be hired, first to be fired. They're the ones that are they're gonna crash, and they're gonna crash big. So I think that, there's a word of caution with regard to some of these artists that Stefan mentioned. But, certainly, the fact that they're out there, and there may be 100 of these artists.
There's not 100.
Well, there are 100 of them.
Name them.
So, of course, I'm not going to name them. But you can go to the Christie's and Sotheby's catalogs and the Phillips.
No,
and
because they're in an auction catalog, it doesn't mean they're 100 of the next blue chip artists. It means there's an auction house that's flogging some art, and there's different names in there. It doesn't mean they're the most important.
Some of your artists were in there,
Yeah, I know.
So Carolina, you went to Tijuana.
They all did very well. They all did very well.
Would their careers be made, or how are they anticipating forging their careers? Are they going to be finding dealers in the big cities, they're working to art fairs, hoping that someone like Stefan will come and discover them? What's the trajectory now?
I mean, I think a lot of it is more sort of community focused and a little bit more focused on sort of Mexico City. Sort of when they're looking towards the art market, they probably look more towards Mexico City than they look towards the U.S. That said, one of the artists I met with had a dealer here in Culver City. Others work more as installation artists because, the work that they do isn't necessarily commercial. So, doing installations at universities, at museums, at Kunsthalls, really this kind of wide range of practices, but I'd say the vast majority of it not supported by the market, partially because I think the market in Mexico is a little small, and then when big Mexican buyers go to buy, they buy kind of the same global blue chip artists that everybody else does. So it's a different part of the ecosystem, I think.
Not true. I have many clients in Mexico.
What's not true? The part about the blue chip?
This definition of blue chip is as well one of the broadly misused and abused definitions.
But it's kind of this global type of buying. It's like you do meet collectors, say, in Tijuana, who don't buy the local artists. They go to New York to buy. They go to, Sonamaco to buy. They're not buying, people there. And it's so, okay, God. Are they blue chip? Maybe not. They're at all levels of the gallery range, but they're sort of looking at sort of what are the greater art world trends and sort of hooking into those.
This is one of the moral problems, regional buying. Because you're in a region, you should buy your regional artists and support your local arts community. You should support the best art. We're in a global environment that's networked together with the periphery.
I'm merely describing the reality for these artists.
The reality is tough.
Not dictating what a collector should buy by any means.
But you're also assuming a definition of what constitutes as best. And this seems to be something that you think is very clear.
The periphery is the new center. The great young Mexican artists, Colombian, African artists appear in the network today because of social media, because of image distribution in a very efficient way. And as those forces erupt and emerge, you're going to be able to establish whether they have visibility and power. And the conversation of like regional collecting and small, I'm very interested in a different dialogue. I'm interested in identifying the next waves, the next movements, the next, whether micro trends or macro trends, very different. I think this like regionalism of supporting artists in LA because they happen to be in LA and because it's convenient, or Mexico. I think you got to build a net over the entire world, from Iceland to Ghana, basically. And you got to then use the network to look at who is making something interesting, who's saying something interesting, and then you bring them into the network. So the distribution can be anywhere. And then these conversations sort of occupy two poles. One is the polarity of the auction houses and their $100 million sales and whether songs go sell or don't sell or up and down. And then the polarity of regional art collecting that sort of tries to sort of define why aren't these regional artists making it, or why they're under-supported. And then you sort of construct this moral episode where it's because the rich guys are buying blue chip, which is really poorly defined. And you end up with this narrative of false conflict that doesn't actually let you dig into the flesh and understand what's actually happened, to look at the plumbing and the bone and the sinew and figure out how to operate within it, because we're having these sort of exaggerated conversations that take us nowhere. And they're consistent. The press likes writing about the auctions and how much money something, or they like writing about how alienation and et cetera, et cetera. A guy built a giant cheese grater downtown and put a couple of $1 billion of art there. There's going to be lines around the block for the next year.
I guess what I'm interested in is, well, speaking to regional art, so there's this show where Stephen and I met, New Objectivity. I found it profoundly moving. It comes from a group of artists concentrated in a small period of time, in a small geographic area, and it has become completely sort of era-defining. It's become an important epoch in art. Are we seeing that emerge now? I wouldn't know where to look. Are we? To what extent is the art that you're identifying and buying? To what extent is it telling the story of our time? Or, I know that's a very dumb, probably question, but I came out of that show thinking, where do I find that now? I find the.
Well, I think there was Paris, there was New York, and all of these artists, the Abex artists, they had a dialogue with each other. In Los Angeles, the Venice artists, some of them are from that generation that I represent, the same thing. The Billy Al Bengtsons, the Ed Moses, Robert Irwin, they all had a dialogue with each other. So it's really important. In Paris, Modigliani was there with a whole bunch of other important artists that emerged at the time. So the communities are important, but we are living in an instantaneous world, a global world. And so I don't know that there is any center anymore. In the art world is a global world, and it's a global market. And so artists can get on Instagram and have dialogue with each other. So it's very exciting. What I'm saying is all these artists are emerging. There's a proliferation of art schools and so forth. And what you have is you have the opportunity. So they're called early blue chip artists. Okay, maybe that's the wrong word, but you know who we're talking about. He mentioned a number of them. One of them, Oscar Murillo, he represents. So
I don't represent him.
Okay, well.
I just have a lot of material.
Whatever, you're close with him. You're close. Okay. So I think that's great. But I just, there's a note of caution because the art market, he's at auction, Murillo, now. It's at Sotheby's, Christie's, whatever. And the bottom could drop out tomorrow. So then what? So the point is, it's great, but it's cyclical too.
Back to sort of the positioning of art. So in one of the earlier panels, a sort of pre-DM panel that we did, we talked to a bunch of designers who are working for essentially absentee homeowners for whom these designers are decorating the fifth house. And they're buying art that goes in the fifth house. They're also working for new tech billionaires who are 25 and have no clue about art. And one of the designers tells a story of driving around San Francisco with $20 million worth of art sitting in the back of the truck that he's driving to this guy's house. It's like a story of our time. But basically, the art has become completely integral with the property, with the wine collection. It's this, and where are these guys who are sort of what part of the ecosystem does this belong in? What part of the bonsai tree?
Shopping.
Shopping.
I mean, I think this has always happened. I mean, it's what Norton Simon did. He went out and bought out the Duveen brothers in New York City, and he filled his museum with it in Pasadena. It's like the idea that some people buy for something other than being engaged with the ideas and the art, I think is probably not new. It's probably old as time.
But are we seeing a kind of explosion right now, a very hot moment for all of this right now?
I mean, I think it's hot, but I also feel like everything just gets magnified by sort of the media gaze, and I don't follow auctions, so I should probably hand this off to you.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the problems, okay? I mean, what they're doing is, again, it's an asset class. So what they're doing is they're buying these works of art. Sometimes they never even see them. There's fireproof vaults in Switzerland, in Dubai, and they're putting the they never even see the art. I mean, yeah, it's not even on their wall. I mean, so they buy and sell. Like Steve Cohen, the billionaire from the hedge funds, was selling a number of works that made records. A Fontana, I think, maybe was one of his. That sold at $29 million. Yeah, these works of art are just so it's like an asset class, and they don't care what's on their sofa. I mean, at that level. So yeah, it's astonishing. But there's also a lack. The reason it's being done is there's a lack of transparency. Yeah, the secondary market, you don't see really what's going on. And when you're talking about numbers like that, they can offshore the art and offshore their assets.
And are those assets affected by, say, I guess you and I were talking this week about, I guess Snapchat has been slightly devalued. These unicorns in the tech world.
Well, we're seeing. I think what happened, for example, in May, we saw Christie's did $1 billion. In November, just now, they did about half of that. And so what you're seeing is, and you're seeing Steve Cohen selling all these works. So there's some thought that right now the market's at a top. It correlates with the stock market, and probably I would think it seems as if the thinking now is that it peaked in May.
Who cares? When it peaked, if it's cyclical, if it goes up, who gives a damn? There are 563 billionaires in China, 512 billionaires in America. They're not competing, they're going on a shopping spree. Do you write about it when a rich guy basically goes and buys some champagne at the liquor store and pays $50,000? It's the same thing. The guy's got a truck with $20 million of art. I go and buy a poster when I'm in college. I put it on the wall. If I've got $10 billion that I stole from some resource deal in Nigeria, I'm going to go and spend $20 million. I know people who've spent $1 million on parties. It's irrelevant. Why discuss the shopping sprees of the rich? They're irrelevant. They make markets up and down, but you basically have 2,000 billionaires who are shopping. Hey, I want this, I want this. It's meaningless. Who cares? It's not discussing art. They went shopping. I mean, you might as well start writing about some guy goes to Maxfield's and blows $2 million.
No, but it's not divorced from real estate markets.
Why? Because it's culture and it occupies a higher moral plane?
No, because it affects the rents and real estate prices all down the chain. It's not completely a separate and isolated market. So there is a market impact.
Why are we even talking about it? Let's talk about art. Why were you talking about? What are we talking about? Stephen Goldberg's analysis of Christie's $1 billion sales. Who gives a damn? Let's talk about something that actually is meaningful.
The point is, it's a business.
So he's giving you a lecture on art as a cyclical investment. Was he a stockbroker saying buy art now, sell art now? Who cares? It makes a difference to you guys?
doing that, and they drive their own prices by buying each other's collections, et cetera, and drive everything.
There's no conspiracy. They're buying shit and selling shit.
It's just that that's a whole other, I mean, buying art for investment and seeing that has grown so quickly, and that the profits have grown so much more.
And so have the losses. The losses have grown as quickly as the profits. For as many people have made money, many people have lost money. They just don't write about it.
Let me jump in here. The point is art is a business, okay? If you don't think it's a business, then you're a fool. But what's good about it is that because of this 1,000th of 1% and the frenzy in the art market and so forth, it's giving artists around the world a chance to break through. And so in a way it's a good thing. Okay, and then you can talk about the real beauty of art, the real meaning of art. And I mean, you don't like this particular Modigliani, but frankly, it's astonishing to look at it in person, to see it. It's absolutely stunning. If you've gone to a show of his work, a singular show of his work, you'll come out of there feeling incredible because of what you've seen. That's the importance of art. It's not the money, but the money is driving.
But the painting you're fixated on discussing is the importance of art. It's the second most expensive painting ever sold. You discuss it.
We went on this rant already.
Yeah. I want to ask. I think Stephen nailed what really ultimately is the meaning of art, the desire, the somehow was elevated by it. Carolina, the artist that you've seen recently, who are you finding yourself really excited by and moved by some of the art that you're seeing? Or are you finding that artists are feeling they've got to play the game, somehow break into the art market? Yeah. And what does that mean? Does it affect the work they do? The art fairs, is it making them change the size of their paintings because they have to
like
be
a Barbara Cartland novel over here?
I mean, there is a lot of sort of playing the game of like, oh, I'm going to make work that can sell, or I'm going to make work that sort of speaks to a certain part of the art world. But I think for me, always the most interesting art is the art in which the artist just doing something that they feel passionately about, or really making a statement about something. And so, when I think about the works that I've seen that recently that have really moved me, I mean, their works, they've been these almost like ephemeral pieces that, like, I saw an installation at Lace by the artist Natalie Bookchin that dealt with all of these like harvested pieces of YouTube video that dealt with questions of scandal. And it was this kind of maze that you navigated in the dark, and you had these different voices that would come on and talk at you. I mean, it is this piece that to this day, I wish some museum would stage it, because I think it's a really important work that talks about sort of the social movement, the social moment that we're living in. I mean, is it generating the headlines about money and sales and this and that? No, it isn't. But I do find that work there, and I find it when the artists make things they care about and don't think about all of the accoutrement,
Thank you. Good back. Yeah. Marcel Duchamp.
Is that
well, she cares about, I think Natalie Bookchin cares, but she doesn't care so much about how much her work costs or what people are going to write about it. It's more, how is it going to be received by a certain kind of viewer? That's what she cares about. What is she going to say with this work? The piece did get reviews, and she's an artist who does not produce very much. Her pieces are very sort of like laborious, and they take years to complete. So it might be one work every 2 or 3 years, but she does get reviewed. She does get grants, and she is out there.
But how does an artist, I mean, I'm listening to all of you and equally, but how does an artist navigate all of these different issues that you're discussing? It's, being from this point of view as an artist listening to you all.
You make good art.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but that's not the navigation part.
I mean, I think there's.
If you make good art and you make a good amount of it, you will be.
Well, it didn't work for Van Gogh.
There's also the factor of luck.
Luck.
You can be as insecure as you want, and you really do great art. Everybody around it sees it and likes it. But to shoot it out is luck.
Helma af Klint. You know Helma af Klint? Helma af Klint, Swedish artist, a precursor to Paul Klee, was doing very similar work. She was a female. She never showed art. She passed away. The work is, do you know Helma F. Klint?
I do not.
The microphone.
Helma F. Klint, Halma F. Klint. She's considered as great as Paul Klee. The Swedish state owns all the work. She was undiscovered for 100 years. She was a woman. She never even thought of showing art. She passed, and they literally in the last decade released it. So she's massive now. Eventually, the good art gets found, as long as it doesn't get burnt or destroyed in the tunnels of history. But eventually, it gets discovered. Henry Darger, the same. I really do believe if the art is great, it eventually profoundly rises to the top.
I mean, I think in terms for artists working today, there's sometimes a conscientious decision that has to be made about, like, okay, do I choose to pursue a gallery career? Do I go the academic route? I mean, there are choices that they make about, will I be an artist who survives on grants and does installation work, or am I going to be more commercial? Like, there are decisions that go into it, and I think a lot of them stem from the type of work an individual artist makes, and also what their own feelings about what they want to do as well.
Can I give you my theory just in 2 seconds? So Marcel Duchamp talks about basically art being produced in its raw state, a la brute, good, bad, or indifferent, and it gets transmitted through time and space. Eventually it gets refined like sugar, molasses into refined sugar. What's happened because of this thing here is that process is accelerated rapidly. So instead of separating this idea of art production and distribution over long elongated periods of time, it is compressed. The discussion of cultural production and cultural distribution, in my opinion, needs to be bound together, studied, examined, and discussed as a singular unit. Now, what happens when you do that? You start to infect the production of culture with the infection of the distribution of culture, because the distribution of culture is infused with morality, as we talk to you. Buy it because you love it. We get into the Barbara Cartland conversation of why you buy art. I bought it because I love you. I love you. Let's get married. It's like this romance, and there's no romance. Artists are either doing important work and good work. It's not a romance novel they're writing. They're making art. And the discussion of cultural distribution and cultural production needs to be discussed and understood methodically. What's different today to the past is that compression, that speed, the bonsai tree. The distance between the leaf and the branch is small now. The difference between a tree at the foundation and the first leaf is great. And that's why I like the analogy of the tree, because it really helps you define and think about these structures across the board.
What is your definition of important?
My definition of important. I think art is a language that progresses and moves us through it is the reflection, it's the cultural reflection of our output as a race, technologically, politically, socially. And art that is important is that which perfectly reflects in perfect synchronicity those movements of time and space as they happen. It's like riding a wave, it's like surfing. They're giant waves that occur. And those great artists are those guys who are literally at the top of the wave, ready to ride it. And those are the guys who make history. And that's what I look for.
We definitely should be drawing to a close. I would like Carolina and Stephen to give concluding points. But I do want to ask, are there any more questions? Are there any burning questions? Do we have time for 2 or 3 questions, or no? Because it's 2 or 3 questions. Let's give it to the lady who's not yet asked a question today, if that's okay.
I just think there's so much important art that is totally out of the gallery system. There are so many artists that are working with public art, 1% for the arts, which is what I do, working with community, transforming society through community, where it's the process that's so important, and community building, and setting the example of how people could live together, especially after today when we live in Paris. And I think that's so important, is the artist's process and what they're trying to communicate.
That's very different from what Stefan thinks.
No, it's not.
No, and like I work with kids and I do large murals and I have
this is a basis for humanity. That should be involved in how we eat food, how we cook food, how we consume everything.
And I have a mural at the farmer's market that's like probably 200 panels made by kids, from homeless street kids in Brazil to people in the Andes in Peru, and the kids from Hancock Park Elementary School. And it's just so important to teach them art, but also about how to get along with other people.
It's the aesthetics of labor exchange. Oscar Murillo did an amazing project where he went to countries all over the world and put fabric and canvas on students' desks from Uganda to Colombia, and they were assembled in Venice. There are now 5,000 of them. It's a foundation called Frequencies. The aesthetics of labor exchange inverts the Warholian aesthetic and brings together these exchanges of labor and family and movements together in a way. You're 100% right. It's not what I'm against. Don't confuse my capitalist business-minded tendencies with my lack of understanding.
No.
Yeah, because like I live off of 1% for the arts, for grants, and
But to get the money, we need to be practical.
Right, and
if
every
we're
project I do
impractical,
is
we're
free to
basically
the
singing a
people.
song on the side of the
But
street.
it's so hard to get the money.
Yeah.
That's the hard.
Stefan, all I saw was the difference was what this audience member's saying is that the process or the art is of value for all who engage with it. But you've said the only art that matters is good art. That's different.
The only art that I'm a businessman. I am trying to accumulate art assets that one day will have massive institutional capital. I want to make a lot of money. So what's important for me is different to what's important for a community outreach program. It doesn't mean I don't think what the community outreach program is important. But here I am in business wanting to do something very specific with my life and time. It doesn't mean I deny the importance of what you, and it doesn't mean that artists will not integrate in community outreach programs and infuse in their practice things that make those community outreach programs good. I work with artists in Africa all over the show. We're doing amazing projects. We basically financed a beautiful library that got flooded in Ghana recently. So yes, the goodness comes out of it, but it comes out through practical leadership.
But in terms of you and your aspirations, will you be Messalina, the guy that made all the money at the time of the French Impressionists, who everybody's forgotten?
Oh, Meissonier.
Meissonier. Is your model to be a Meissonier making tons of money now, or is your model to be the guy that supports Van Gogh or something?
I have no goddamn idea. I'm just working hard to keep myself afloat at this point. If I was a fortune teller, I'd be fine.
I mean, I just wanted to add something to what this audience member said, because if you do see an interesting current in what's happening in art today, is a lot of artists sort of engaging social issues in works that are all about process. I mean, this is work that goes back to the work that Suzanne Lacey was doing here in Los Angeles in like the 1970s, involving community members in sort of like wide-ranging projects that had everything to do with women's issues, issues of race and class, adolescence, and stuff that was more about bringing people together than creating an object. So that is kind of an interesting, and I think
Pollock was all about process.
Yeah.
The paintings were the outcome.
But I mean, I think this social aspect is something interesting because it's something that a lot of artists, like right now, I think because there is so much attention on the art market, there is also, you do see these artists who say, no, my work is going to be not necessarily geared at that. It's going to be about this process, but this process that entails community.
Yeah, I made that choice 20 years ago.
Good for you.
We should move.
And to me, it's just more important to get out there and work with the people, and maybe some of the art that goes up in the murals, because they're like patchwork canvases, may not be that aesthetically pleasing, but how you put it together and how you lay it all out, you can make it.
I mean, JR's project of urban renewal is amazing. The street artist,
I want to
JR.
ask you, I want to look at that.
JR is incredible. You know JR? I mean, he's done his work is fascinating.
I think one more question. We better keep it short.
I just have a statement.
Keep it a short statement.
It'll be a short statement. I think it's great. I apologize I came in late, but when I came in, I was very kind of upset that there seemed to be a discussion of an either or discussion. Either we do money or we do art. I think you have to do both. I don't think it's an either or.
Oh, that's what everybody's agreed, I think. Everybody's agreed. We could continue, but I think we should wrap it up and get a drink. And a drink up the road at Christopher Guy. Stephen, did you want to say anything else? And did you see that Modigliani, by the way? That dreadful second-rate Modigliani.
No, it's going to China, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it. But I do want to emphasize, and you saw that, you saw that he's ultimately revealed himself to be a businessman as well. With all that.
By the way, anyone can reach me. Simkovitz at Gmail. My number's public. Just Google me. Clients, collectors, customers, anyone.
Right. You see the businessman at work, so it's not all about aesthetics after all. But the point that I'm making is, if you're involved in the art world, there's a reason why you're involved in the art world, and it's not. It should be not just because there's a lot of money involved there, but if you see something. When I go into a gallery, it doesn't happen very often, but suddenly you see the most incredible, extraordinary thing, and you feel fantastic. It makes you feel good.
You also get that feeling when you go for a foot massage.
No, you don't, actually. So anyway, I would say that's really what it's all about. What it's all about is the excitement that you get in seeing the incredible new art, and now you can see it in many, many different ways, as I said, even on Instagram. So that's what I think excites everybody here, but we can't divorce it from. It is a big business, a big global business, and it's helping. In the end, it's helping everybody, I think.
Stephen Goldberg, thank you so much. Attorney, art lawyer, writes regularly for Artillery magazine. Carolina Miranda, read her in the LA Times. Stefan Simon.
So there you go. Our newly minted Convo by Design icon registry inductee and fantastic conversation from 2015. Thank you, Francis, for all you do and for all you've given back. Thank you to my partner sponsors, Design Hardware, Timber Tech, and Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, and friend to specifiers near and far. And again, thank you to Pacific Sales for presenting the Convo by Design icon registry. Thank you for listening. I really couldn't do this without you. Wouldn't want to. My hope is that this show allows you a respite. It provides you some inspiration, motivation, keeps you inspired and focused so you can rise above the chaos.